right. Let's see if that posted. Okay, it has posted in Facebook.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you
I
hear
can hear
me?
you all good in my headphones.
Can you
Probably
hear
just
me?
because you hadn't spoken yet.
No audio ban.
Says how YouTube's going all good.
Boom, better. I think we're good now. Might have been my internet. Hello all.
Interesting.
We're trying some new software.
All right, great to see. We are. G'day, Ben and Matt, hearing you both.
Look at that. Didn't even show the comments. We're leveling up.
Look at that. 2022. It's just I'm refreshing our original URL and it's just donuts. So just bear with us a sec.
Just give us a moment while we sort this out.
So Facebook's off running.
Looks like Twitter's up and running.
Yeah. Yep. Good signs, good signs.
Is YouTube up and running?
YouTube just a bit late to the party.
Anyone want to jump over on YouTube and see if so you can grab it on YouTube? Doesn't look like it's working on YouTube. Anyway, while Matt's getting that sorted, what do we think of the markets? I recorded my daily show this morning and we had a bounce of about 8%, and looks like we've given all that back and probably more by the time we posted it this afternoon.
All right, sweet. I found it. It's not the original one, but this is a stream going to Twitter and Facebook, so I think we should do that. And I might quickly just update the post on the platform.
All right.
Just keep talking.
Yeah, so obviously overnight we saw the Biden crypto executive order come out, and as I sort of described on Tuesday or Monday, I felt this was a bit of a non-event. I mean, this was something that had been pushed for months and months, and it finally came through overnight. And basically what it really came out to say is that the US are really trying to stand as a leading player in the financial space. And I think they've sort of realized that, they need to update and adopt the digital asset, I guess, legislation to allow builders, consumers, crypto lovers of the world to come and flock to the US. I mean, these guys continue to want to build the economy and have the greatest builders and whatnot in the country. So they need to adopt their the policies to adapt to that. So, overnight when that got announced, I think the markets reacted pretty positive to it. But, since sort of last 4 or 5 hours, we've had a bit of a steep sell-off as well. So I guess we'll jump into it soon. But I think just the macro landscape right now is pretty all over the shop. I don't think many people really know what's going to happen. I mean, Raoul Powell's really been pushing potentially a recession. He's basically come out and said it's not guaranteed, but for everything but at this point, which could be pretty scary for a lot of people. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit tonight about what that actually means for you as investors, what that means for the economy. But yeah, could be pretty scary.
I think if you were in a bear market, you would kind of see that really positive news yesterday, Ben. You would kind of see what happened today with it selling off pretty quickly and it just fizzling out. That's kind of very reminiscent of a bear market. If that news came out in a bull market, would have been off to the races, I think, with Bitcoin's price. So it kind of really, what my biggest takeaway from that in terms of where we are in the market was just how little of an effect that like massively, I guess, bullish, or I guess a massive relief for the market.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And I think all assets really are sold off. Even I think oil retraced overnight. I think that even hit $110 oil US, and I think that retraced. That was down 4 or 5%. I'm pretty sure overnight. So I'm pretty sure during these times, what were we? We had crude oil was down 12%, back down to $110. So that obviously really took off when the war began. Bitcoin was up 8%, and now it's given all that back. But really everything, the NASDAQ had a bit of a bounce. I think what we're just seeing is really just uncertainty.
Yeah, I think commodities just soaring tends in this environment tends to be kind of a bit of a negative. I guess if you're long commodities, Ben, I think you don't really have that good of an outlook of what's going to happen in the world. I was speaking to some mates. It almost reminds me of that, the Big Short in a way, with those people shorting the housing market, but they kind of knew the outcome wouldn't be great for society. It's kind of that similar kind of strange sort of mental effect. But
I was even watching. Are we up on YouTube now, Matt?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for sticking with us. We're just
bullish on this software. I think we're just
bullish in the long term, bearish in the short term on.
Yeah. No, thanks everyone. Alrighty.
Okay, I think we're
cool. I'll just get this off. Sweet. Alrighty. Well, yeah, thank you for tuning in, everyone. This is I guess our first just experimenting with this this format here with Ben, a live hangout where it's an opportunity for all of you to ask us whatever you want about the crypto markets, or I guess what we are doing as investors at the moment as well. Those two sorts of questions ideally, and we'll pick and choose as we go. And in the meantime, me and Ben will have a discussion about the state of the market and I guess our current investing approach. So yeah, keep those questions coming, whether it's on Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube. They will all be popping up thanks to this this software, I believe. So we'll see how that goes.
I'm just deleting the post I made on that old link.
Yeah.
So people don't know link anyway.
No,
good to go.
Good. Yeah, so I think with that,
Matt, the format.
Yeah. I was just gonna kick things off with the Biden the Biden news. I think you were talking a bit about that, Ben, but that's, if I'm looking back at the past week, like that's by far the biggest crypto like industry news. And I think I think there's been some outcomes of that. I think Treasury is going to make a report. But for those of you who have been unaware, there's been probably the past 24 months or so this real tussle between the US agencies really trying to, I guess, win over regulatory power over the crypto space. They're incentivized to really want that, because then it would, I guess, give them more resources from government, and just in general make them a more powerful entity. So yeah, there's the CFTC, the futures kind of agency. Then there's the SEC. There's several others. There's kind of the OCC, which is, there's just acronyms galore. And yeah, the Treasury as well. I think there were concerns, particularly with this Biden and Janet Yellen kind of briefing or announcement that came out yesterday, that Treasury, particularly the past 18 months or so, has been really I guess antagonistic to crypto. There were rumors that Steven Mnuchin, the past treasurer before Yellen, he was really there was strong rumors that he was the instigator behind some of you have been in here a bit longer. What year are we up to now? It would have been about New Year's Eve around that time, about 13 or 15 months ago or so, where the Treasury really slipped in this like late, very, very late amendment, and the whole crypto industry, all the advocate bodies were like, it really took them by surprise, and it seemed like very, very scary news for the US domestic crypto industry. So there were concerns, and I guess with Treasury having a lot more say over this sort of news that was coming out with the Biden administration, that they would kind of get their paws all over it again. So it was a relief yesterday, at least for some who were fearing the worst. So that was good to see, but there hasn't been too many other big news items crypto specific recently, Ben.
No, I think what's been interesting, I think obviously the NFT market got super, super probably toppy over the last, probably over Christmas into January. And I think I've seen social trends and traffic decrease by about 50, 60% overall. So that's probably something to keep an eye on. I've also seen that the traffic for like centralized exchanges also dropped. I think it's down 20% month over month since January. So I think just generally the retail audience right now, or just crypto in general, is quite, in bearish conditions. I think, different people have different, I guess, calculations on what a bear market is. But I mean, as you said, Matt, off the back of the bullish news of the Biden administration, basically saying like digital assets are here to stay and we're welcoming it. We had a 7-8% move and then gave it all back. So yeah, I think it's an interesting time, and we're certainly not getting the momentum that we probably all would have hoped, holding above 40,000 for too long. So yeah, I mean, I think the NFT markets really took a lot of the liquidity and a lot of the capital late last year, and I think what we're seeing now is probably a healthy retracement. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Matt, but I think it's probably a healthy market cycle. I mean, I tweeted the other day, I think we probably saw the local top when Tai Lopez came out and gave his fans, look at that chart,
Yeah, wow. Yeah, there's a strong case to be made that this has all coincided as well when all these geopolitical tensions were increasing with Ukraine and Russia, and then eventually turning into a war. And that NFTs, like, let's be honest, are quite a speculative, a very, very speculative like asset class, very risky. So they would be the first to get slammed in any event where like shit's hitting the fan, so to speak. Like globally, commodities are rising, everyone's scared of inflation. There is that counter argument, that maybe the people who are really just on the brink and like living paycheck to paycheck probably aren't even invested in NFTs. So that's another argument. That's a counter argument. I've actually kind of heard that NFTs might not take as big of a hit, but here we are. But I think with the Tai Lopez thing, I think that was, a week ago or so, but I'm sure he probably was planning it right at that peak and announced it. Have you gotten much into NFTs, Ben, yourself? I think, was it the Gary V one you really nailed?
Yeah,
there?
I've lapped up a few 12.5 books a little while ago. Ben, one of our mates tipped me off to grab some 12 books. I personally haven't. I think me personally, when it was sort of late last year, November, December, when things were really taking off, it did very much feel like, not comparing NFTs to the ICO, era, but certainly that market sentiment was like that. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry was either creating an NFT or trying to sell an NFT and whatnot. But look, I think the NFT market here is here to stay. I think the fundamentals of what the smart contract can do for business owners, whether small, medium, large, celebrities, membership groups, communities, artists, like I think it has a lot more fundamental value than, let's say, the ICO bubble. So I think it will come back. I think we're just seeing like a natural market cycle where it's got to flush out the people that come in for the quick cash grab. It's got to flush out the bad actors, and we'll see the cream of the crop stay on top. And I think to the NFT portfolio you and Nathan have put together, Matt, I think hopefully we're going to try and find some winners over the long term.
Yeah, probably our first alpha drop for the night is that we're investing in one tomorrow, so we're going to be sharing that with pro and legacy members. I think because I do think there's so much value in the NFT space now that we've had that 50, 60% retracements. Even the blue chips like Cool Cats, Doodles, Azuki, Invisible Friends, Bored Apes for about 120 ETH at the very top, their price floor, and I think now it's back to about 73 or something. So even they probably have taken the lightest hit, to give you some perspective. And I guess all the long tail, really ones that aren't really well known, they're just like a liquid JPEGs, so to speak. But there are like real big opportunities out there still. Like there was a member today in the Discord that they ended up picking up 3 cyber brokers, which is one that in our NFT portfolio update last week, we put that down as one that we had on the short list but decided to pass up, mainly because it was minting on that day and there would just be a few complications there. And also did not know whether we would be able to get onto that public mint, because I don't think there were many left. However, that member, I think Nathan did highlight it in February as well, and that member ended up getting 3 of them, and I think they sold one around 0.5 ETH just to take some profits. But like in this heavy sell-off, like there are still like some really life-changing opportunities. I just think that they're a lot harder to find. Like you need to be 24/7, really just vetting every project you can.
Matt, that's a good point. And Thomas has just asked a question here on YouTube around, our thoughts on NFTs that are promising, I guess, a connection to the real world. I think he's mentioned here one about like property, comedy club, golf, etc. Like, projects like LinksDAO, for example, or I know there's been a few soccer clubs look into ownership. I think that's probably, for me, one of the more exciting aspects of NFTs, like whether or not you're raising money to buy a golf club, but the idea around like real world events where you can see the history. Like if you go to let's just say you go to the AFL grand final, you go to the NFL, sort of grand final as well. Like these sort of events in history would be epic to be able to showcase that you went to these events, right? Like instead of framing a ticket that you went on the wall, like this sort of stuff you can hold in your MetaMask wallet or your NFT. Maybe soon, I think Twitter's starting to integrate NFTs as well. Like your ability to showcase, and I guess that social clout. Like, why do people buy fancy shoes? Why do people buy fancy cars? Like, it's a way of communicating your social status. And I think NFTs are going to do something very similar. I know you were pretty big on the art balls, Matt. AO.
Yeah, I got one. The place where mine was where the game winner. My position on the court, it was only eligible for the doubles, so I really got stitched up there. Yeah. So I had to cheer on that, but unfortunately not. But this is another case where they've already promised in the future, or not, promised, like strongly hinted that next AO they will reward the original ones, and it's going to be so easy, especially with all these social kind of profile, social media, Web3, social media platforms rising up. It's gonna be so easy just to like connect with people who have a given NFT in their wallet. So on this question here, you could do that obviously for the golf course like LinksDAO. A commercial property one, like I still personally just think that's like so long away. I know you did put a follow-up question there, Thomas, about the regulatory risk. I think the commercial property one, regulatory risk, yes, but I think also just like the liquidity, like who's there on the secondary market to buy like one of these NFTs, and is that all kosher? Kind of like anyone around the world buying it in another country, stuff like that.
What do you think about, Matt, about the fractionalized ownership of property? I think it's been I've seen a little bit recently around like, millennials, sort of our generation, those that are just earning a salary are going to really struggle to buy property. Like what about the idea of, I mean, I don't think it's a new idea necessarily, fractionalized ownership, but is NFTs the gateway to do that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think like NFTs had always been touted as, well, one use case of them being unique ownership of a fraction of a a property or whatever. or even an NFT that gets fractionalized, and then everyone can basically crowd their money together to own, part of an apartment or something. We saw securitization really take off in like 2017. I remember there was so many startups then raising money, like
Real estate on the
securitize.
blockchain.
Yeah,
Remember
securitize.
that?
Yeah, like concrete was another. Like, yeah, there were heaps more. Like, which the idea was like, I think it was more just like the technological aspect of it, and I guess regulators understanding it and all. Like, I assume would have been the biggest hurdle there. Um, yeah, personally, like I need to see like a lot more before like I would get excited about it. The idea is great, particularly when you've got like investors or everyday people just getting priced out of the property market in many developed nations like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and stuff. Or basically everywhere. Hey, but
Yeah.
yeah. I don't really spend too much time on it because it's just crickets at the moment. Like I haven't seen much in that realm for a while. But no, I do know like that's why I love NFTs like MetaKey, for example. Like I know Maddie talks a lot about this in terms of giving NFTs more applicability and use cases other than just, profile pictures and stuff like that. So, I think I'm expecting, a lot from him in terms of, this sort of one where it's a real life linkage between holding an NFT and something that's digital as well. So fashion's
What are you
another realm there.
What are you aiming for at the moment, Matt, in terms of returns? El Hombre 741 has put in a question here just around. I'm not going to touch on the project because I'm not familiar with it, but just around
Yeah.
like the peg with ETH. And for me personally, when I'm looking at not even NFTs but just crypto right now, like our long-term growth portfolio, like USD obviously is something over the long term we want to beat, but with short-term volatility, I personally think trying to look at your ETH and BTC pairs and seeing how you're performing against those two gives you a better indicator, in my opinion, on how you're performing against the market, the crypto market. Because obviously there's not many variables. Sorry, there's a lot of variables in the crypto market that you can't control. But what you can control is trying to balance your portfolio to beat BTC or ETH rather than just holding that on its own. Do you agree with that,
Yeah.
or do you see it differently?
Yeah, I agree. It all depends on what your goals are, right? Like I know some people, they will, if they are holding a large amount of ETH or any ETH, one of their hesitancies with the NFTs would be like, okay, I don't want to dip into my ETH to buy an NFT because of this exact question that we have here. Like what happens if ETH goes on a run? Are my NFTs going to reprice to reflect that? Like we don't know that. So I've seen a lot of people then who would just use their bank balance or their cash, using that to basically buy NFTs directly to get around that. So then you are able to, I suppose, still get the biggest upside or downside from ETH that you originally had. So you don't have to worry about something like that is in this question. If you are long term bullish on ETH, like my approach personally is just having a stash or virtual stash of ETH, and then just kind of leaving that separate, and then just with my NFTs trying to, some of them just holding for the long term, like 5-10 years I will be, and then others, maybe trying to see ones that I do believe as an investor can, generate returns short term, and then I'm looking personally to sell them back into ETH, and then obviously remembering to take a portion of that ETH back into AUD to pay taxes and stuff, because Australia is one of those countries where we still do have to pay tax on those sorts of capital gains, even though they are all on ETH and NFTs.
Yeah, and I'm probably similar, although I'm not flipping NFTs or even buying NFTs right now. I'm really continuing to dollar cost average into Bitcoin. And
Yeah.
touching on Chris's question here, his question is, should his portfolio, his portfolio is 33% ETH and no BTC. Should he consider swapping some ETH for BTC? He also holds 7 out of the 12 coins long-term portfolio. I personally believe everyone should hold Bitcoin in their portfolio. I think just Bitcoin on its own is separate to ETH, and comparing BTC to ETH is, again, apples and oranges. I think Bitcoin long-term is A, an inflation hedge, B, a store of value, C, just because it's the blue chip and the leader of all crypto assets. Like, I think the market will have its time again where Bitcoin will have its run, and altcoins again will probably continue to bleed. And I think just with the growth of the altcoin market recently, like I think there's over 12 or 13,000 crypto assets like at the moment. Like, it's really astonishing. And I believe that 95% of those will go to zero at some stage in the future. Like, I think we're in the early days, similar to the internet era, when you've got to try and find the Amazons and the Apples of the world. And I honestly believe Bitcoin will continue to be, leading the charge. Like, look at everything that's happened over the last 5, 6, 7 years. The smartest minds going up to compete against Bitcoin, and still it's a leader, and sort of no one's really come close. So I think Bitcoin, for me, definitely should hold a decent chunk of your portfolio. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, same. I think still the majority. That's my opinion anyway, in terms of composition of just crypto specific portfolio. Like, I always, I think it's just the safest play just to have, majority in BTC and ETH, and then whatever your risk tolerance is really. With NFTs, I kind of break it up again a step further, like having a segment of my crypto portfolio like just for NFTs. And then a segment like just for altcoins. So yeah, that's me personally, but yeah, that's a good question here. Got another one on Facebook. Can you do a quick analysis of the N project? So the N project is one that really came out when, if some people would remember last year, the Loot project. Is that showing up? Yeah, Loot project like just exploded onto the scene, and was all the rage. The N project, why was it all the rage? It's because it brought this new innovation where it was basically NFTs being created based off of metadata. So the community could rally around metadata, which was basically just a list of like loot related words, loot being like, character related stuff. Like, I've got this kind of sword, this kind of costume, or this kind of armor, stuff like that. And then that was a massive like kind of innovation. Loot took off for a bit. The N project came in after that. I remember seeing N project like really like run hard after that. But no, those two like ended up struggling real badly. I think partly because of the big pullback in the crypto market, but then also, just reflecting on that as an investor, like that, the fundamentals just weren't there in terms of like, it should have been pretty obvious in hindsight that this was really going to run into some issues in terms of just gas, Ethereum, like, because it was deployed on like the mainnet, Ethereum mainnet, and the gas costs were just astronomical late last year. And like, on reflection, like, I would have liked to have identified that. I think Phantom ended up having their own type of loot that did run for a bit, but I have not looked at, to answer your question, like, I have not looked at the N project in many, many months. I think out of those metadata kind of specific ones, I do know that like Hyperloot is building on layer 2s again to get rid of that problem I just described. I haven't looked into this too much, but I have followed it, and I've been meaning to kind of like explore it a bit further, because they are kind of, I guess they came in and only started, I guess, later last year. So if you do like that sort of stuff, I would recommend looking at Hyperloot and kind of, maybe pulling the pin on N project, or going into their Discord and seeing what the status of their community is.
Matt, we've also got a question around Magic, and again, I had caught up with Ben, one of our mates, the other day, and he was walking me through the Magic treasure game. Have you played around with Magic at all? I think we've done an asset report on it. It's super fascinating, the level of complexity some of these play-to-earn games are building. We're sitting and looking at some of the strategies these players are creating, and it's super in depth. Like, and I think they're still figuring out the game itself is still figuring out the economics of the game. I think Treasure, I believe, was compromised recently, so they went down for a little bit of time. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fascinating, these play to earn games, and I think trying to take market share of your sort of console gamers over to games where there is a real world use case to generate money outside of competition. It's interesting. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I did buy some Magic kind of like over New Year's because I kept seeing adoption of these these small brains just really taking off, and they were deployed on, I think it's on Arbitrum. Yeah, it is. Again, in response to kind of loot, like not failing, that's too strong of a word because they're still working on it. But to see all these like communities just like really, hustling it and like working hard on like I guess making this into reality. That's something that fascinates me. And it's kind of like this connection between like your passion and I guess financial incentivization to, I guess, contribute to that ecosystem or the treasure ecosystem. And I guess it kind of aligns those two where, historically it hasn't really been that clear, the link between the two, or just to be able to do it, put in a few hours every week towards, I guess, helping out in the treasure community and doing things like that. And that would ultimately, I guess, help appreciate the value of Magic over time. But no, Magic's like super, super interesting. I think just last week, before they got their exploit, or before the exploit was detected, they were about to launch their very first some sort of like external, I guess, third party was like deploying on Treasure, and they had to use Magic as their native currency. So I'm really keen to see if they can get that kind of, really, I guess, spiraling kind of positive growth, and that should lead to higher value of Magic. But that's a good one. I should have brought that up. Other than Hyperloop, there's a lot of different experiments here. So yeah.
Another one of the members, Matt, have you heard of Rumble Kong League? Apparently they're building an epic NFT P2E game for basketball.
Yeah, I've heard of it. It was very hot, like when probably before the run last year. I think that might be the one that Stephen Curry actually has like a a team or whatever. But no, I have not looked into that too much at all. Again, it's just the amount of time. As a researcher, like there's probably like there's dozens and dozens of NFT collections launching per day. This one obviously broke the mold and really, went into the upper tier of NFTs, but I still never got around to looking at it in depth. But again, play to earn and all that. It's going to be an interesting year, I think, for play to earn. There's still heavy like VC money going into play to earn ecosystems and stuff, but we saw Axie kind of like take off, and now it's kind of, like inevitably drawn back. But at the moment, it's just a bit of just like a tumbleweeds in terms of just relative eyeballs and attention on like what's happening in the space. It could be because of my social graph is like heavily geared towards, I guess, just NFTs and Ethereum, but we should chat to Nick about that. I'm pretty sure he has much the same conclusion.
I think like as not even in NFTs, well, but I was even speaking to a VC today that they basically mentioned that they've started to really back off the investing. They were tokenized investing, but really started to back off, their deployment of capital, because a lot of these, whether it be NFT, tokenized assets, DAOs, like a lot of them are really struggling to find product market fit and what makes them different and what actually generates revenue, builds a company. Like at the end of the day, all of these, whether it's an NFT, whether it's an asset or a DAO, they're all companies, right? Like they have to do something, whether it be in the form of value to members, whether it be form of exclusivity, whether it be like through utility, whatever it needs to be, like it needs to do something. And I think what we're probably starting to find soon is that not all these NFTs or not all these projects are gonna work out. There's a lot gonna die, and a lot are not gonna find product market fit. So, yeah, I think hype and sentiment only last so long, right?
Yeah, I've heard that too. In January and February, like VCs starting to either like verbally agree to like, invest, and then a few weeks later they've kind of either like reduced their amount or completely withdrawn from the round. So you're still kind of seeing investments rounds like announced like this week and last week and stuff. But I would imagine that over the next couple of months I would start to slow down. We saw Immutable X actually. They raised a huge round earlier this week.
It was huge
From
for the
yeah,
Aussies.
yeah. So no, there's still plenty of money going around, but again, that's Immutable X has kind of really shown a lot more. I guess they are a bit later stage, but to your point, yeah, there's a lot that have raised money and are now just really struggling to, I guess, just gain users.
Good question here from El Hombre. Have you considered creating a DAO with Collective Shift? If so, why? Why not? Yeah, I mean, we certainly had some conversations around it. I think it's interesting. It's a difficult transition to move from where we are now, from a subscription model with fiat currency, to a DAO. Not that that's the reason why you shouldn't do it, but there's a lot of thought that needs to go into it. We actually spent a little bit of time really digging into how that would look, and there's a lot of questions to answer, right? It's the value I think that we provide a Collective Shift is the simplification of crypto, right? So it's synthesizing the information and giving you as investors information that's going to help you make better decisions faster. Now, for me, on one end of a DAO, it's completely ran by the community, which is great, and I think for certain organizations that is a lot of the value proposition. But the value proposition of what Collective Shift provide is the synthesized information and helping you make decisions faster. So it's sort of like acting against that. But I think there's somewhere in the middle where there is value where maybe there's a token that all members have, or you've got to maybe buy the token to get access to the membership group, and it's a tokenized token gated membership group, but maybe that token also has value in some way, shape, or form, whether it be through our investments or a cut of the membership fees or something like that. Like, I think there's something interesting there. It's just a fair bit of work, and I guess we're all really focusing on trying to build the product right now from a content perspective and helping you make those decisions. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer, El Hombre, but I definitely think it's not out of the question whatsoever.
Yeah, we definitely considered it. To answer your question, we've considered it. Yeah, in addition to the points Ben made in terms of the bearish case, I think the bullish case is pretty like well known. I think there's been like a lot of I guess just concerns, or not concerns, but just the need for, I guess, things that you would get in traditional employment. Like, so I know in the US specifically, there's, health insurance and all that sort of thing is like really important. And, sorting that out for like people that are like contributing to like 3 or 4 DAOs a week. Like, how does that look if you like, if you drive your car and you crash, for instance, and you're off work for like 3 months, like what happens then? Like all these sorts of like cases are like really like promisingly are like being worked on. I have seen a couple of startups that I think are working on that specific problem. But no, I think I love the idea. I think just in terms of Collective Shift here, it's more about, I suppose, priorities today, like today's priorities.
Yeah, I agree. G Road, surely the Animal Kingdom NFT is coming to an end. By the way, like your Twitter Eiffel Tower tweet, that was great. Yeah, we've been putting a little bit more effort into our social media recently, and I'm glad you like that. I'm not sure if you saw that, Matt. It was a difference of a Collective Shift portfolio versus a non-Collective Shift portfolio.
Yeah. I saw that. I think I saw it on Instagram too. Really up in the game there. No, Animal Kingdom NFT, to be honest, I've not heard of that. At least I might visually recognize it. No. But yeah, there's a lot that are going to come to an end. Got one here on. Do you know anything about NFTs in the art world? I know that it's still quite divisive, to be honest. I know that there's a lot of artists still pushing back on the whole idea, whether it's to do with energy usage, or whether it's just to do with it's just a bit like strange to be that kind of, I guess just some artists have a problem with, I guess, really like there's a lot more kind of like marketing and things like that like, at this stage, at least in the early stages, that you need to be doing. However, yeah, there's tons of like NFT art that are really taking off. I think there's been a heavy bear market in terms of like one-of-one NFTs, which you see a lot of artists typically do. So like Super Rare is like the go-to platform for that. They've really struggled in terms of just volume and things like that. But no, I think that's definitely a use case there, and I guess some of the actual, well, not even a use case really. Some of the actual art is just like terrific, and I guess it's a way for these artists to get more well known in a real, I guess, modern kind of Web3 kind of way. But then you've seen the traditional art houses and also the traditional auction houses as well, like Sotheby's and Christie's, auctioning off some art. And then I think I saw something in London. I think some London art gallery or whatever was doing something with NFTs. So I think that adoption will continue to kind of increase just as these galleries and stuff continue to see just the interest in NFTs. But no, art, and that's just one of many categories. There's just so many.
Matt, are you looking at any opportunities at the moment outside of NFTs? I think, one area that I'm looking into right now, obviously DeFi has just been completely obliterated over the past 12 months. I think, most projects are assets down 70, 80%. I think, we're pretty bullish on a couple there in our ESCO. For me, I love the idea of Maple just around to get MPL, just around the institutional DeFi borrowing market. And I think those guys, for one, have actual customers, an actual product, a company that's generating revenue, which I'm super excited about. I think that's actually held up relatively well. I think we're actually up since middle of late last year in these conditions. So I think that's probably something to say in itself.
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah, I think they're still like got a lot of news coming out. And there was a graph of their adoption. But yeah, I guess to answer your point, Ben, like this is the classic time, right? When you would I can't find it. When you would really just, it just doesn't feel right to invest in like DeFi protocols at the moment. Like I saw a tweet the other day, a Twitter thread about just how low of a value MKR, like MakerDAO's native token, is at the moment, like historically. They do all these P/E kind of ratios and comparing that to stocks and whatnot. Like Token Terminal is the go-to website for all of that sort of analysis, and it's just come down like so far, almost to the point where it just doesn't seem right to just not invest in it. But yeah, like I'm still hesitant to invest personally, but that's just like, honestly, that's just my natural reaction to having seen it gone down so much. Like that's my initial approach, is like, where my mind goes is like, what's going to like catalyze, some sort of like attention and growth in DeFi, which I struggle to like find that answer at the moment. And yeah, Andre and someone else as well, both of like earlier this week, just I guess left the whole DeFi space altogether, which was, I think, operationally not that much of a hit. I think they got misinterpreted in terms of like finance and Phantom. Like they weren't really core contributors, but I think more just like symbolically in terms of like they contributed so many like tools and third-party apps and like helped get Finance and Phantom like off the ground. So to see them leave is just like kind of one of those typical stories you see like when things are getting like really bad. So as an investor, I start to be like, okay, how much more like can we take?
I noticed Terra Luna. I know there's a lot of fans out there. I think we hold that in our long-term growth portfolio. I'm not sure if you know too much about it, Matt. But I think I saw Luna token or the Terra ecosystem have the highest locked TVL behind Ethereum, and what they're building inside their ecosystem with the UST token. Not entirely sure the tokenomics of that, but really seen Luna take off over the past 12, 24 months. I think we...
Yeah, I think we did.
Recently.
I remember covering it like it must be almost like 3 years ago now for members. And I remember back then it was Terra was almost just like a rebranded. The core team came out of something called like Chai Wallet, and that was like a massive South Korean, big South Korean kind of mobile payments company, and that was like kind of the only thing that Terra kind of had back then. But then you saw them release like Anchor protocol, Mirror protocol, like in about 2020, like maybe early last year. And ever since then, yeah, I guess the UST, which is similar in many ways to DAI or even like synthetics as like synthetic USD. That's just gone gangbusters. And I guess the whole differentiator, or a big one at least, is like the demographics, with Terra being coming out of South Korea initially. So if you go here on I think it's on chains on DeFi Llama, it's actually, yeah, like many people would be surprised to learn that Terra is actually like shot up to second place in terms of all the big change, like of all the like news you hear about, Polygon, Solana, like they seem to get a lot of news, those two, and Avalanche. Like a lot of people would be surprised to see just how well Terra is doing.
Yeah, it sort of flies under the radar a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Still, a bit almost like in between 1/4 and 1/5 of Ethereum's TVL, but more than double third place, which is at this stage Binance Smart Chain. So yeah, really, again, like opportunities when things are just looking like pretty terrible. There's been like a lot of people who have still managed to do like either tread water like during these past like 2 months, or even in some rarer cases actually have they're in the green. So yeah, I know we do have a lot of members who do hold Luna. I've got someone saying here one of their biggest holds.
Chris has got some bags.
Yeah.
Matt, just shifting gears quickly, Ryan has asked a good question here just around like, new people coming into the space. First of all, the fact that it's down 40-50% since November, which, by the way, I've heard and seen a lot of people that bought in November and now have sold in February, March, which is, again, I think just lack of education there is, again, once at the forefront. But, Ryan sort of arguing here that who on earth is going to be investing into stocks and assets when the price of everything is going up? And I think, yeah, honestly, I think that's a really good point. I mean, there's talks of recession and talks of all this sort of stuff, and just literally inflation, like, even through friends of mine and seeing around like the cost of fuel, it's costing some people $140, $150, $160 just to fill up your car.
Yeah.
And has wage growth gone anywhere in the last like 2 or 3 years? Like, it hasn't. People either need to get a second job, get a wage increase, or invest. And, it's hard to invest, like Ryan's saying here, if you don't have that spare capital to do that, and if you're living paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, it's gonna probably get pretty ugly soon.
Yeah, this is I saved a thread for me to read personally afterwards, and I skimmed through it, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's like what happens to retail now? It's like cost of living's like going through the roof. People are going back to work full time, like, because retail trading really took off during lockdown with whatever that Reddit group was, Wall Street Bets and Robinhood and all the meme stocks and whatnot. But all of them have got like absolutely slams. Like if you go on like all those meme stocks, like they're down like 80% and whatnot. All those hyped tech stocks like Zoom, Asana, Like we both use those, but their tech stocks have like their like stock valuation has absolutely plummeted. And I was really wanting to read through this because they made some great points, and it made me kind of just really question, yeah, who is going to be there to invest into such a risky, so what is such a risky asset, crypto assets and or NFTs? Um, and again, where do we find where are the catalysts for the next? Like, how do we, as a market, how does the market get out of this? And they're questions that at this stage like aren't looking like too promising. Things can change at an instant, as we've seen over the past month. But no, I think that warrants a good post for members, Ben, I think.
I agree. And a lot of the stocks, I mean, some of the tech stocks have just been absolutely pummeled.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like, I can think of stuff that I think will catalyze like an NFT market. I can see the NFT market kind of getting back into gear through like some events that I see coming up. But that's just within its own micro space, like it's still heavily affected by what's happening in Ukraine, and what's happening with the price of Bitcoin and things like that. So I will be doing a YouTube video on that next week, just talking about it in general.
Like, just looking here, even Meta, previously Facebook, down 47% in 6 months. Like, that's extraordinary. That's crypto stats.
Yeah, yeah, that's altcoin. Yeah, yeah,
That's insane.
yeah, yeah. It's a really great point. That question, who is going to be buying these things, is something that I encourage all viewers out there to just continue, I guess, really stewing that over in your head. Not just automatically thinking that things are going to be like they were in the past 2 years, where everyone had stimulus checks and everyone was online because they were at home and stuff like that. So,
and I think having a plan, Matt, is probably, as you point out there, like having a plan. Like, what is your plan right now, and how will you feel if Bitcoin goes to 25K? Not that I'm saying it will go to 25K, but how will you feel if it goes down that high? How will you feel if we rebound and bounce from here and go to 40, 50K? Do you feel as though you bought enough? Are you happy where you are? Are you storing some cash to take advantage of some lower assets if things continue to slide downwards? Like, I think it's just having a plan and thinking about it, which is important.
yeah, 100%. And back to that point of like, you don't want to be that person who sells in February after you bought, in November, because maybe you actually need some liquidity back. And that's probably, or maybe the reason they did sell, but that their need for liquidity should have been identified back in November when they were even before they invested, right? So, all those things are like super, super important. They're always important, but in these times, particularly when things could get worse, it's definitely worth considering.
And Thomas just mentioned here that Warren Buffett has about 180 billion to deploy. Maybe he's
Well, yeah, you have seen there were record buybacks and all that. I think there were record kind of figures in terms of just like options being realized by executives of all these tech companies. I guess they were all record numbers because the valuations were so high, but it still is like very, I guess, speaks volumes in terms of, I guess, the smart or quote unquote smart money, maybe just getting out when things were kind of really overheating, and now they might, yeah, as Thomas has said here about Warren Buffett, having that parked cash to deploy when things, potentially do get a lot worse. So, yeah, always good to have some liquidity.
agree. Cool, Matt. Well, if there's any other questions, we might finish with a couple more if there's any more questions. Otherwise, it's been a good first little live session, Matt.
Yeah, it sure has. For anyone that is there on the YouTube channel as well, we have been trying to really up our game. We've got the editors on board now, and as you were seeing with Ben's videos, yeah, production quality is going up. So yeah, we would appreciate if you all do like and subscribe to the channel, because we will be really upping our content, and hopefully the quality as well will just keep getting better and better. I did just want to also remind you, for whoever has not, whoever has
And we're
not
always
seen
open for
this,
why Matt's bringing this up. We're always open to feedback.
yeah,
Keep giving us some feedback. Yeah, I'm trialing some new daily crypto shows. Thomas, glad you're enjoying those. Of just trying to wrap around the market in 6 to 10 minutes, which sometimes is a bit hard because I like to waffle on, but trying to smash through it for those that are busy. Metaverse Explorer, agree, mate. Short-term prices really don't matter. You can put the portfolio away and just keep buying in every 8 hours. Are you paid on? You paid every couple of hours, Metaverse.
What's he doing every 8 hours?
He's DCAing every 8 hours. I actually did
Oh,
hear
wow.
once. I did hear from someone that they were DCAing every hour, and I thought,
Oh,
I mean, that's
wow.
a bit extreme.
Alrighty, I've got this link up here. Just a reminder, we are giving away. It's our first ever NFT giveaway. There's 5 days left. MEV Army. That is one we do hold in the NFT portfolio as well. We are giving away one of them. I think they're worth about 0.1 ETH at the moment. And really strong conviction over that for the long term. If you do know anything about that, but I will drop the link in the YouTube chat here. You can find it. Actually, no, I'll make you work for it. It's in the it's on our Twitter. If you just go there, or even go onto our website, collectiveshift.io, you will see, I think, a little bar that comes up the top. And we do have recently, just a reminder, have started our 14-day trials as well for any of you non-members who are following along. But yeah, head to collectiveshift.io, and it's not going to pop up because I'm logged in, but you can enter the MEV Army giveaway, and we'll be doing that in, I think, 5 days, Ben.
And you've got an NFT coming out tomorrow, mate. I think you're purchasing a little bit of alpha.
Yeah, we do. So yeah, new NFT investment, which will be announced tomorrow as well.
I like it. Buying the dip.
Yeah,
Okay, and see what it is.
That's it.
Thanks everyone for jumping on. It's
Alrighty.
been fun. We'll probably do this again pretty soon, I think. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, this was good fun. Thanks for joining me, Ben. And thanks everyone for tuning in. See you
Good night
later.
all.